It's Comic Artist Pro Secrets. I'm Ethan Van Sciver, comic book artist and Star Wars fan. Hey everyone, George Lucas lost his faith, and that's where all of this started. A few of you have been very upset with me because I condemned the prequels as well as the terrible SJW Disney movies that followed, and many of you think that people who condemned the prequels or criticized harshly the prequels are part of the reason why George Lucas got sad and sold his baby off to Papa Disney. I don't think that's true at all. I really don't. I think something happened to George Lucas at the turn of the millennium. Maybe it happened sooner, but it was really evident in the work that he was producing then that he had changed and become much more cynical as a man. When I say that he lost his faith, I mean that literally. I don't know what religious faith George Lucas is or ever was. I have no idea if he ever was religious or spiritual in any way, but his movies were very spiritual, and they connected with everyone. You go back to Star Wars, A New Hope, and it's right there from the very beginning. Of course, it doesn't come right out and say, hey, the Force is God, however you understand God. But millions and millions of people understood that that's what George Lucas meant. Obi-Wan Kenobi said, well, the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and penetrates us. It binds the galaxy together. I think that struck a chord with many people. This is an energy field and a sense of well-being and peace, and almost also it comes with these kind of precognitive abilities, not to mention slight bits of telekinesis. But aside from that, it's something that can be tapped into through meditation and through peace, and from it comes wisdom and a calm and a sense that everything is going to be okay, and also certainly a maturity that we saw Luke attain over the course of those three movies. The Force felt very, very much like a metaphor for God. And people responded to that greatly. I remember being a kid and being very, very small. And I think this happened in Utah. But when I used to live there, I lived there the first 5 years of my life. They would show the kids that first Star Wars movie in church. During the week, we'd come to church and if the parents were playing basketball or something like that, they'd put us in a room and show us Star Wars and feel quite all right in doing so, no matter how old we were, because the movie had such a positive spiritual message. And I do believe that is what everyone responds to in Star Wars. What a shame. What a shame that George Lucas seems to have felt embarrassed about that spiritual message when he turned his back on it and gave it a scientific explanation in The Phantom Menace, officially making Star Wars what it never was before, a science fiction movie. It's not about any kind of mystical force in the universe after all, necessarily. It's something that people are born with in their blood. And certain people are more, able to tap into the Force than others. It's basically a mutant ability now, rather than something that all of us can feel if we just stop holding on to our blasters by our sides and just be calm and just tune in and believe. And I think that very much is where George Lucas went wrong with Star Wars, and where people got a very, very bad feeling about Star Wars. Now, you can say that those prequels were badly written. They were. You could say they were poorly acted. Indeed, they were. And you can say good things about them. You could say that, hey, it really kind of told the complete story in a very nice way. It wrapped up the story of Anakin Skywalker. and his rise and fall, and it made the whole 6 movies into a nice story arc for Darth Vader, and it did. But I do believe also that the reason why people reacted poorly to it, the reason why people's hearts were broken by it, was that George Lucas took God and changed it into science. Now, listen, I am not a particularly religious fellow. I feel like I am a spiritual guy. I'm not somebody who rejects atheism as a philosophy. I mean, that, it's sad. It's no fun to be an atheist, but that's not the reason why this is apparent to me. It's apparent to me because I think even atheists and people who don't believe in God kind of wish that they did, kind of wish that there was something like God out there, that there was the Force. They like things like that. Everyone likes things like that in their fiction. I'm sure of it, whether they want to admit it or not. Now, it's also interesting that George Lucas joined Steven Spielberg in another beloved franchise called Indiana Jones. The Indiana Jones franchise. Raiders of the Lost Ark was the first movie. And, the archaeologist, lead character, Harrison Ford, one of my favorite actors of all time, was looking for, the Ark of the Covenant in the first movie. Wonderful. That's a nice artifact from the Old Testament. And then in the next movie, Temple of Doom, he was looking for one of the Sankara stones. I believe it was Hinduism. And then he was looking for the last cup of Jesus Christ. What's it? Yeah, it's that feeling when you have to pause for a minute and because you forgot the Holy Grail. It's so embarrassing. So he's looking for the Holy Grail in the third movie. So three religious artifacts that do in fact prove in the movie to contain power, benevolent power. I mean, the Nazis think that they can, that the Ark of the Covenant is just power that can be wielded by anyone, and that turns out to not be the case. It is the power of God, and God, does judge good and evil. And, all of these artifacts do, as it turns out, end up to be powerful religious artifacts that prove the existence of God in those 3 movies. Everyone loves those 3 movies. I love those 3 movies very, very much. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull from 2008, a movie that George Lucas co-wrote. Suddenly, what we're looking for is scientific in basis. Very, very strange. We're looking for something UFO related, something that is science. It's not religious at all. The artifact that we're looking for proves that there's life in the galaxy beyond life in the universe beyond ours, and that's the source of supernatural power rather than God. And again, people, even though I think the movie got great reviews, I actually loved the movie as well. I had a great time at Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and everybody looked at me funny. I was grateful for another Indiana Jones movie. People rejected it. People rejected it and said it was bad. It was bad for all kinds of reasons. But I think, again, fundamentally, that was one of the reasons at heart, was that George Lucas, twice in the same decade, used these movies that he created, these spiritually affirming movies, action films, to kind of turn his back on the spiritual messages that the original movies contained. The original trilogies were kind of based around, and decided instead for some hokey, fake-o science explanations for the MacGuffins in these other movies, and people don't like them. People spat them out. Now, once the prequels were mocked, George Lucas turned Star Wars over to Disney, and now there's no mention of midichlorians, but even worse than that, the Force is basically like a set of superhero powers. You can fly, you can become a Force ghost, you can do all kinds of crazy things. Now, it used to be the Force with great concentration and meditation, and peace and calm. You might be able to retrieve your lightsaber that is, 3 yards away from you, and it might fly into your hand. Now you can fly like Superman through space. So we went from, something serious and mystical and spiritual and peaceful and benevolent, even though the Force can be. There is a dark side to the Force as well, as there certainly is with, with all religion, to a weirdo scientific biological explanation to absurd superhero comic book nonsense over the course of 40 years. A beloved franchise now has absolutely no meaning. And that's what we're all reacting to. I mean, you watch me make these videos where, I'm making fun of this person and this bit in the movie and that. Those are just symptoms of the central problem. Star Wars has lost its faith because George Lucas lost his faith. And that is why we are where we are now.